Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. And today we have an incredibly special guest joining us. Her name is Kat Hartigan, and she is the Vice President of International at Clari, a groundbreaking revenue operations platform that's transforming the way that businesses manage their revenue processes. And in our conversation today, Kat is going to share her fascinating origin story from studying neuroscience to becoming VP International at Clari, while sharing her unique perspectives on the ever-evolving tech landscape. And we'll also touch upon her experiences living in London, her time at Soho and WeWork, and her ambitious goals for Clari's international expansion. And as we dive into the world of revenue operations, its impact on businesses and the role of technology, Kat is also going to discuss the challenges faced by women in the tech industry and addressing topics such as confidence gaps, the need for greater diversity in leadership positions, and offers some candid insights on imposter syndrome and practical advice for aspiring female leaders, and offers some invaluable guidance for those looking to make a mark in the world of tech and business. And hopefully we'll also have time to explore Clari's revenue platform and discuss how it helps companies improve things like forecasting accuracy. And I also want to demystify the world of RevOps, revenue governance and collaboration. I also want to know more about the role of technology in RevOps and revenue governance and collaboration too. So whether you're a business leader, a tech enthusiast, or simply interested in learning more about the experiences of a female leader in a dynamic industry, trust me, you're not going to want to miss this episode. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to London here in the UK, where Kat is going to be talking about her story, Clari's revenue platform, the power of RevOps, the importance of championing diversity in the world of tech, and so much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, firstly, Neil, thanks for having me today. It's an honour. So I'm Kat Hartigan, VP of International at Clari, which is the end-to-end revenue operations platform. I've now been in seat for 9 months, so I'm just about to close out my third quarter. Wish me and my team luck, having come across from WeWork sort of in August last year. My role here really involves running the go-to-market strategy across both EMEA and APAC, with a strong focus on driving growth of both our new business and install base. On a personal note, I'm an Aussie-born Brit, which you may pick up from my accent, hopefully subtle, living in London. Some may ask why I moved here, Neil, because of the weather. I'm often doing the same. I mean, it's so cold. It's colder than Sydney winter right now. And I'm a mother of 2 girls under 3, which is certainly my harder job on the side.
I must admit, it is funny because everyone thinks the grass is green. You've come all the way from Australia to here, and people over here want to do the same and go to Australia. But I've got a few relatives over there, and I was asking, well, what's the draw of Britain and those low grey skies, you know? But they made the point of saying to me that we take for granted over here how many European cities and how many destinations we've got right on our doorstep, so many different cultures, etc. Right?
It's the gateway. Yeah, it certainly is. Professionally, I think there's a lot more upside living in London versus Sydney, unfortunately.
Okay, well, there's another podcast right there. But before I want to find out more about Clari. But before we do, I've got a bit of a tradition on the podcast where I always try and find out more about the origin story behind my guests. So can you share a little bit more about your journey leading up to your role as VP International at Clari, including your experiences? I was looking before you came on here at Soho House and WeWork. There's a lot going on there. So what's your origin story? We'll put you on this.
Yes, and I think it's a bit of a zigzag story, but I'll rewind back to sort of university years, as I've always been really fascinated by kind of behavioral neuroscience and basically, the biology behind why we do what we do. Which led me to complete an honours degree in the field. Think white lab coat and very old professors with glasses on their nose. That was me. But reflecting on, I guess, this fascination with psychology and behaviour really fueled my interest in business and sales over the last 15 years. And despite really loving this career, like many people, I exited my degree lacking direction. What I did know, Neil, and we just discussed it, is a huge passion for moving to Europe and more specifically London to be kind of in the midst of what I saw as like the biggest melting pot in the world, such diverse array of cultures, the gateway to Europe, and really this launching pad for my career. So I was pretty headstrong back then. So I'd, regardless of my parents' advice and wishes, I sort of jumped on a plane and found my first job, which was heading up recruitment at Soho House. I'd had sort of a previous relationship with them. And I think this love of selling in HR led to a burning desire to move officially into sort of sales. And that's when I kind of took on the head of sales and partnerships role as Soho House scaled their global footprint. And despite loving the cachet and lifestyle at Soho House, think kind of working with global brands, Cannes Film Festival, LA Academy Awards, I definitely wanted to gravitate towards technology. You could say I had a love affair with B2B SaaS. So with my sort of headstrong nature, I was determined to jump the sort of fence, as it were. Fortunately, at that time, actually, WeWork reached out, and though, I'm not officially tech, they had a really exciting opportunity. They just closed their Series D. And at that time, WeWork was pretty shiny and pretty attractive. Obviously, the tide changed a little bit, but, still I'm such a big fan of that organization. So I kind of, took that opportunity and moved over from Soho House. And my charter there was what might be a little bit taboo today, which was growth at all costs. I think that's been somewhat tarnished, that phrase. But I had to hire over 100 employees across the EMEA go-to-market organization in an effort to sort of deliver, in excess of 100% year-on-year growth and really expand the enterprise business from 5 to 55% of global revenues in just 3 years. And looking back, it was really bloody bonkers, actually. It was a buckle up type experience, which, I think just gave me not just my sort of hard skills, but like soft skills and sort of the grit and resilience that I hopefully have today. But yeah, so despite the challenges that WeWork faced, the sales culture was just really infectious. That we had a rock star team, and due to the really strong values, there was a very amazing culture of accountability, overachievement, and learning. So that was fantastic, and it's what really built or kind of where I found my love of building. And I knew that my next role would also involve something similar. Similar sort of series, and that's when Clari reached out.
And as you said, that path took you to Clari. And I've got to ask, what initially drew you to the company? And you mentioned a few moments ago you're just closing your third quarter. So
yes.
How's that gone? And what were some of your goals and visions for Clari's international expansion?
Yeah, so I actually rewind sort of early last year, actually. So a year ago, I wasn't looking when Clari approached me. I was on maternity leave with a 3-week-old newborn, translation barely functioning. But due to this inherent desire to move into tech, I obviously took the call. And the call was from my now boss, who is just a very inspirational female leader in the space. So she reached out, and I went through the interview process. And what really struck me was sort of threefold, actually. The product was really impressive. And as a sales leader that came from an environment that relied on a heavy sort of large RevOps function and disparate tools to run revenue, so BI, Excel, CRM, I saw this kind of single pane of glass, and I thought this is going to really help me become a more strategic sales leader. And then the culture at Clari was super infectious, and it came through in every meeting I had, every subsequent kind of leadership interaction. And the executive team, so the CRO Kevin, and also the chief people officer, just really sort of sold me. So by the end, it was a very easy decision. And I think the kind of vision that I've put together with my team and my superiors is really about how can we invest in the international region to become play a bigger role in Clari's global sort of revenue. So what we're trying to do is sort of optimize kind of our processes and systems and talent, and hopefully, by the time we do go public, international play a much bigger role.
And that brings us completely up to speed and sets the scene perfectly for our conversation today, because one of the things I always try and do is take an area in business or business technology and try and demystify it, put in our language that everyone can understand and understand the kind of value and ROI of it. So today I wanted to invite you on here to talk about RevOps. And just to set the scene, can you explain the concept of revenue operations and revenue governance and collaboration, and how these emerging trends and technology are beginning to shape businesses in the UK, Europe and beyond?
Yeah, and there's been such a huge sort of influx in roles in the revenue operations space, or RevOps that we like to call it. So the concept of RevOps has come about due to the fact that companies and revenue teams have realized they just need to find a better way to run revenue by ensuring that all revenue critical employees that can, work across multiple departments need to work out of unified systems or a single pane of glass, in addition to sort of standardizing best practices and replicating these at scale. And then the department just allows leaders to spot areas of revenue leak and solve problems in sustainable ways. So we think at Clari, the evolution needs to actually go further than just RevOps, beyond the traditional construct. And revenue leaders are starting to expect more from technology they adopt. So if the tech doesn't allow for better collaboration and more reliable governance, then leaders will quite rightly identify it as non-essential. So we think the evolution will result in less reliance on current solutions like spreadsheets and BI, simply because they're not purpose-built to run revenue and scale revenue, and often are major sources of revenue leak. So we actually think that RevCG, or revenue collaboration and governance, is the next evolution for RevOps.
And for people listening that may be interested in exploring this, they're also typically held back, especially now in these uncertain times, that every new tech project has to go under a microscope for what value it can deliver to their company. So on that side of things, how does Clari's revenue platform help revenue teams do things like drive efficiency, predictability, and growth in their business? And are there any examples you can share just to bring it to life a little as well?
No, definitely. And there are so many examples, Neil, but I'll select a few that kind of are top of mind for me. So as it relates to predictability, the lion's share of our CRO power users, as we call them, claim Clari reports upwards of 95% accuracy in their forecast call from week 3 of the quarter, which is, very, very powerful as you think about where to sort of invest and divest your time and how you kind of, really optimize for the future. And one CRO in particular, Kevin, raves to me that Clari is generally within 0.25% of his business's finish, which is just crazy good in these challenging times. So that's predictability is, super critical in sort of times of growth, but just fundamental during a downturn. And from a productivity perspective, some of the largest gains are realized across the field. So your sales reps save so much time having a centralized management system, so not having to use multiple tools to log activities and update opportunities, as Clari fully automates this process. So customers like Adobe, Zoom, or Nutanix report 50% decrease in CRM entry time and really accelerate the sales process by 25%. Again, in these challenging times, this is super critical in terms of sort of realizing that value. And then a lot of just customers anecdotally may report that Clari helps minimize the noise across the organization. This single pane of glass just allows all departments that are touching revenue to sing from the same hymn sheet. And then I'd say just, from my experience coming from, changing industries, but switching organizations, is that Clari allows you to really successfully roll out and adopt a robust sales process and methodology, which ultimately leads to this predictability that we're all kind of chasing.
And on your experience there as well, I think the IT industry and the tech industry has had a bad reputation over the years, especially around things like diversity and the lack of women in the industry. It is said to be improving. I read this, but I'd love to hear your viewpoint on this. As a female leader in the tech industry, what have been some of the challenges that you've faced? How have you overcome them? And have you seen any improvements?
Yeah, I think a lot about this topic, especially as I'm relatively new to tech, but came from a similarly male-dominated industry of real estate. So I have been, in the midst of it for many years. I recently read actually that Gartner reported females make up less than a third of sales management roles, with even fewer in leadership positions. And unfortunately, the further up the ladder you go, this drastically decreases, with females only sort of on 14% of boards across the tech industry. So for me personally, and what I've observed, it's largely a confidence gap. So a lot of capable women that consistently overachieve and even apply for bigger roles question whether they have the right skill set. And that has a sort of downstream impact as it relates to interviewing and, getting those sort of more senior positions. And I found a funny kind of, data point from Forbes as well is that, when a job posting goes online, it may state sort of 10 critical factors that are required for the role. A man, generally applies if he has 6, maybe 7, and a woman applies if she has in excess of 10. And the takeaway for me is that, perfectionism is a huge problem. Fear, imposter syndrome can really prevent an individual sort of move into leadership. And I can appreciate this through sort of, experience and validate it through observation. I personally have overcome the kind of lack of confidence and imposter sort of challenges by finding mentors and sponsors sort of in and outside of my organization who help to reinforce my strengths. And I think either as a leader or a sort of individual contributor, it's important to recognize and amplify sort of what you're good at and really excel in that area, because the perfectionism is, it's very sort of, it's a big trap that a lot of women fall into, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a big trap that everyone falls into as well, that lack of confidence, imposter syndrome. I know I've experienced it in the past. And for any women that are listening to our conversation today, and your words have just resonated with them, and they're ticking those things off that you said, what advice would you give to other women seeking leadership roles in technology and business?
Yeah, definitely. My advice is really, first and foremost, surround yourself with ambitious, authentic, open and inspiring women. I think, they could come in the form of mentors, sponsors, confidants. Find your tribe and really unite with that tribe, both in your immediate workforce and beyond, or it may be in sort of extracurricular communities. I think what I've learned as well over the last 20 years is double down and amplify your strengths, like harness your superpowers and know what they are. In a leadership role, it's like have your leadership philosophy and really, really own that. We all have weaknesses or areas for development, but as long as you sort of up level these to the point where they won't trip you up, just put them to the side, and don't focus on what you're not doing perfectly. So just focus on what differentiates you. And I guarantee there's a lot. And I'd say to the other female leaders out there, we can help or hinder this process. Let's take responsibility for elevating and progressing talent around us. I think encouragement is key. Support aspiring women to be open and vulnerable. And really pursue opportunities that appear to be unattainable, and be that sponsor, sponsor women in your organization.
Fantastic advice. And before you came on the podcast, I was reading about Clari's revenue platform. And my first question before inviting any guests on is, hey, what problem are we solving here? What value does it offer? And I was reading how you provide total visibility to revenue teams. And again, so important right now. So my question to you is, how does this visibility help companies spot things like risks and opportunities in their pipelines and improve their overall forecasting accuracy with technology? And I don't expect you to name any names here, but maybe use a client story just to bring it all to life.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd love to take the opportunity to highlight a new-ish customer, and actually sort of a legacy European logo, Pearson. I'm sure most of your listeners know. So they came to us. They had a lot of trouble managing their sales process and pipeline effectively. There's just a lot of pain across the organization. They were using multiple tools to manage the process and forecast, which made it difficult to get an accurate view of their sort of, overall performance. The sales team also faced big challenges in identifying their high value, high upside opportunities. And there's just a lack of visibility into their customers' buying patterns. So as we'd call it at Clari, there's just a lot of revenue leak. So they're, losing a lot of revenue across multiple stages of the buying process. And so Pearson, fast forward through the evaluation process, decided to implement Clari to streamline this process and have, again, a single pane of glass. And since implementation, it's just been so wonderful to see this efficiency that's been realized across their teams. And they've also reported an increase of 20% in productivity, and that's within a year of implementation. So I'd say, as it relates to the transparency question you mentioned, and for me as a leader as well, I've never had such real-time, actionable insights that kind of like shout at me every time I log into Clari as to where do you need to lean in? Where do you need to invest your time? What are these upcoming risks, whether it's today in an in-flight opportunity, or whether it's kind of, mitigating risk in your out-quarter, sales potential. So it is so powerful. It really doesn't, there's no stone unturned. You cannot hide from what is inherently sort of at risk. And, conversely, where are the biggest opportunities? Where do you need to kind of capitalize on to realize accelerated growth?
You've been on an incredible journey. I've loved hearing about it today. And you said at the very beginning, you're just closing your third quarter. And I've got to ask, where do you go from here? What does the future hold for Clari? And are there any upcoming features, improvements, expansions that you're particularly excited about, or any teasers you can leave us with for members of your community they might be listening?
Absolutely. And we all congregated at our revenue kickoff in Vegas a few weeks ago. And, traditionally that's the sort of arena where companies launch and sort of publish to the organization the key roadmap items as it relates to the product updates. And so our team left incredibly excited. So a few things that are, upcoming. We're very excited about Gen AI and how this will change and accelerate our team's run revenue. So we recently announced that RevGPT, a new generative AI solution built into the Clari revenue platform, leverages ChatGPT to give companies the ability to really get answers to their most critical revenue questions and take action with speed and precision. And I think I'd have to say, Clari has been a very fast mover in the space. The fact that we're already seeing that integration is amazing. We've already launched smart summaries. I mentioned this to you, Neil, when we talked about conversational intelligence. So after we finish our call today, our Wingman tool will send me a very accurate and succinct summary of our call. So there's no manual kind of entry required to go back and transcribe what we talked about. And we're also heads down applying Gen AI to our industry-leading revenue database. As you can imagine, we have sort of in excess of $1 trillion under management. So we want to help revenue teams ask and get immediate answers to really granular questions about specific kind of meetings, deals in flights, as well as bigger sort of picture questions about risk, sales goals, and forecasts. So that will be such a game changer. So we're very excited about that.
Wow, exciting times ahead. And I can't thank you enough for coming on here, sharing your story, your insights and your expertise. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave one other thing for everyone listening, and that is a book that we can add to our Amazon wish list for whatever reason. All I'm going to ask is, what book would you like to add to that list and why?
Yes, and I've read several great ones recently, but I'd have to say The Coaching Habit by Michael Stanier is such a good sort of tool for your toolbox for sales leadership. It just provides such accessible and practical advice as to how to really foster a culture of coaching. It arms leaders with real sort of repeatable habits that stay with you over time. One of the takeaways I have from Michael's book is his phrase, the advice monster. And I always sort of trigger that phrase when I go into sort of one-to-one or a coaching opportunity, because, we as humans, we default to advice. We want to talk, we want to kind of solve a problem. But coaching is the opposite, isn't it? It's like, how do we ask the right questions so someone can really come up with the solutions themselves? So I'd say that book is a real favorite of mine.
Awesome. Well, I'll get that added straight to our Amazon wish list. And we've covered a lot in a short amount of time today. We even just hinted on the Wingman feature there. And anyone listening just wanting to find out more information on anything we talked about and maybe even dive a little bit deeper into the world of RevOps, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, so I think, certainly Clari is here to help. We'd love to talk you through how conversational intelligence or call recording can support your revenue critical functions in addition to the Clari sort of core platform. So please reach out to myself or the team and we will support you there.
Well, again, thanks for sharing your story today and also discussing the benefits of RevOps and revenue governance and collaboration, because it's a huge emerging trend for businesses all around the world at the moment. And your experience as a female leader in the world of tech, inspirational, and just a big thank you for sharing it all with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. It was fantastic. Appreciate it.
So a huge thank you for coming on the podcast. For me, it's clear that there are numerous valuable lessons and insights to take away from our discussion there. Because yes, we explored Kat's inspiring journey and the path that took her to becoming the VP International at Clari, and her experiences at Soho and WeWork, but also the world of revenue operations and its transformative impact on businesses. The role of technology, along with the challenges faced by women in the tech industry. But I think one of the key takeaways from the episode overall is the importance of fostering diversity in leadership positions and addressing confidence gaps that could well be holding so many women back from reaching their full potential. And I think Kat's candid insights on imposter syndrome and her advice for aspiring female leaders serve as a reminder for everyone to believe in ourselves more and to support one another on our professional journeys. It's not all about us. And it also became quite evident quite quickly to me that embracing RevOps and revenue governance and collaboration, and the role of technology in that as well. Put it into a big melting pot, and it can significantly benefit businesses, not just here in the UK, but Europe and indeed around the world. I'll also be checking out Kat's book, The Coaching Habit there. It sounds like a great resource for anyone looking to develop leadership skills and support teams more effectively. So a big thank you to Kat for joining me on Tech Talks Daily today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, and hopefully it provided you with some valuable insights and inspiration too. And if this is your first episode you've heard, don't forget to subscribe to the show, and feel free to reach out to Kat's team for Clari if you have any questions or support. But a big thank you for listening today. Keep pushing boundaries, embrace innovation, leverage technology, strive for excellence in everything that you do. And until next time, don't be a stranger.